Welcome to the first video in Unit 1 of Biblical Aramaic 1. In this video, we're going to be going over the history of the Hebrew and Aramaic alphabet. And truthfully, the Aramaic and Hebrew alphabet is really the Phoenician alphabet, which was shared by other cultures, specifically the Israelites and other Aramaic-speaking groups. Even Moabite, for example, was written with the same alphabet. So what I refer to as the Hebrew alphabet in this slide presentation is really the Phoenician alphabet, the Aramaic alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet. Before we get ahead of ourselves, however, let's jump into the presentation. So let's do a little bit of an overview first of scripts in the ancient Near East. And there were three basic types. The first one is pictographic. Here are some examples of pictographic script from the 4th millennium BC, and this is found in Michael Roef's Cultural Atlas of Ancient Mesopotamia. And you can see how the pictographic script evolves into cuneiform from the late 4th millennium, 3100 BC, to 2400 BC, the middle of the 3rd millennium. And then how that develops even further into standard Neo-Assyrian cuneiform in the 7th century BC. Pictographic would be pictures. Syllabic would be where each grapheme, each written symbol, represents a syllable. And then, of course, there is alphabetic. So focusing in on alphabetic, because Hebrew and Aramaic are alphabetic scripts, let's look at some of the early alphabetic scripts in the ancient Near East. All right, let's continue by looking at the consonantal alphabet that is used for Hebrew and Aramaic in the Tanakh or the Hebrew Bible. So on the right, we have Aleph. Aleph. And since we use the modern Israeli pronunciation of Hebrew in biblical scholarship, and that is also going to be true of biblical Aramaic, that scholars just tend to use the modern Israeli pronunciation for convenience sake. Aleph is a silent letter. And at this point, we have to be clear that there is no one correct pronunciation of Hebrew or Aramaic from the ancient world. These languages evolved over the course of time, sometimes pretty quickly. And so the way these languages were pronounced in one location in, say, the 7th century is different from how they would have been pronounced in another location or even the same location in the 5th century. And so it's for that reason that scholars just tend to use the modern Israeli pronunciation, which we will do in Aramaic 1. Occasionally, I will refer to the different sounds that Aramaic is thought to have made, typically in ancient times, but we're going to save that for a little bit later because there are a lot of complicated issues in reconstructing the pronunciation of an ancient language. So for now, we're just sticking with the modern Israeli pronunciation so that we can read the text and also so that we can converse about the text together. All right, the second letter is Beit, Beit, and Beit makes the B sound like in boy when it has the dagesh in it. Now, in the ancient world, there was no such thing as the dagesh. This is a medieval addition to the consonantal script of Hebrew and Aramaic produced by the Tiberian Masoretes. And so when the beit has a dot in it, it will have a b sound. When the beit does not have the dot or the dagesh, it makes a v sound. Now, as for how to pronounce this letter, some people will say we call it veit with a V when it doesn't have the dagesh. Most people will still call it beit, and they'll just distinguish between beit with a dagesh and beit without a dagesh. Beit with a dagesh makes b, beit without a dagesh makes v. All right, next we have gimel, and that's going to make a g sound, g. And that's followed by dalet, dalet, which makes a D sound. That's followed by hey, which makes a soft H sound, like in the word happy. And vav, which, when functioning as a consonant, makes a V sound, like in the word victory. It will be identical in pronunciation, at least in modern Israeli pronunciation, to the letter beit when beit does not have a dagesh. So just to review, we've got aleph, beit, gimel, dalet, hey, vav. What we'll see when we go over the vowel signs is that the letter vav sometimes does not function as a consonant, and when it doesn't, it will typically represent an oo or an o sound, oo or o. The letter hey actually sometimes doesn't function as a consonant either, and it will represent an ah or o sound, ah or o. We'll see examples of that later on. And then here's the Aramaic Tel Dan inscription. Again, the same script, so you can see that Hebrew and Aramaic are using the same script. This is important because it's the first historical reference from outside the Bible to mention the house of David, and you can see that highlighted there. And after I zoom out, you'll see that this is Beit Yud Tav, the word Beit for house, Dalet Vav Dalet, Beit David, the house of David. And there's a transcription. Thanks for checking out this video. If you're interested in watching the entire video and checking out my Biblical Aramaic 1 or Biblical Aramaic 2 courses, I invite you to go over to my Patreon channel. Hope to see you there.